Hi, and welcome to this flipped instructional session. This is Earth Science. I am Mrs. Fessel, and today we are going to talk about Unit 5, specifically lessons 5.10 to 5.15, which discuss natural disasters. And then in the flipped follow-up, we'll talk about how to complete the natural disaster presentation that you will turn in as the TGA after choosing one of these natural disasters. So let's get started. The first natural disaster that this lesson unit covers is tsunamis. So tsunamis begin when some sort of trigger, such as an earthquake, landslide, or volcano, causes a large part of the surface of the water to rise or fall. After this sudden displacement of water, gravity acts to balance the water levels back, resulting in a tsunami. So if you can see in this picture here, if there's an underwater earthquake, it creates a disturbance in the water, and that starts the water rippling. And as we're going to talk about on the next slide, this ripple starts very small, but as it nears land, the ocean floor pushes it up, and that's what creates the tidal wave that we think of as a tsunami. So as I just mentioned, in the open ocean, tsunami waves are relatively small because they are moving at the same speed and they're spaced out. But as the waves move closer to the shore and encounter shallower water, right here in the surf zone, they slow down. The water moving behind it catches up, and that's what causes the waves to bunch up and build up, resulting in a larger wave. So that's why tsunamis can be up to 100 feet or 30 meters tall. So a tsunami is often made up of more than one wave that have bunched together, and the first wave might not be the largest. So sometimes people think a tsunami is over when it is not. So we talked about height. In terms of speed, tsunamis can travel very quickly. In the depths of the ocean, which is when they're out at sea, they can travel at the depths of 5,000 meters, the tsunami can travel as fast as 800 kilometers per hour. As it nears the shore, it drops to 250 kilometers, and then when it gets very close to the shore, it goes to 80 kilometers per hour. While it does slow down a lot, it goes 10 times slower, you could not outrun a tsunami. So next we have hurricanes, 5.11. So the definition of a hurricane is a storm with violent winds that is often accompanied by rain. They will form in warm waters, either over the Atlantic or the eastern Pacific Oceans. Typhoons are the same thing, just that begin in the western Pacific, and cyclones, the same thing, but begin in the South Pacific. So it's all the same tropical storm, just with a different name. So hurricanes form only over warm tropical waters when the air is very moist. The hurricane season is June 1st through November 30th because this is when the waters of the Atlantic Ocean are the warmest. So they need two things, warm rising air and circulating winds. So as you can see in this picture, this is how hurricanes form. Warm, moist air moves over the ocean. It rises into the atmosphere and cools. This is similar to how a cloud forms. But if warm air continues to rise and starts spinning, that's when we get a hurricane, that the heat continues to release into the atmosphere and the storm continues to grow. So when a hurricane reaches land, it can be very dangerous. It will weaken because warm water is what fuels it, but it oftentimes causes a storm surge and high winds. So that's what makes it dangerous, is the flooding of the ocean on all the water that it carries in. So a storm surge, which I mentioned just a minute ago, is water that is pushed onshore by the winds of the storm. So this is what causes the most damage in a hurricane, is the water that is being pushed onto the shore, because the water levels can increase more than 15 feet. So considering that most of the coastline are less than 10 feet above sea level, this can be very dangerous. So if you can see in this picture, the storm's moving onto land, and the storm surge is right here as the wind pushes water, similar to a tsunami wave, and the wave piles up, creating a storm surge. Floods and landslides. Floods occur when there is too much water in a given location. Heavy rainfall is a common cause of flooding. When an area experiences heavy rains, it can cause rivers, oceans, and lakes to flow past their banks or usual boundaries. A flash flood is a particular flood that occurs when a lot of very heavy rain falls over a short period of time. These are the most dangerous types of floods because it's not a slow rising of water, but it is a quick, flood without much warning. All right, so another cause of floods can be snowfall, because especially in mountainous areas, there's a lot of snowfall during the fall and winter. So then once spring comes, there's a lot of melting snow, which can have a dramatic impact. While flooding is rare due to just snowmelt, there's low elevation snowmelt with sudden temperature variation can create banks of flooding with very little warning. So floods are typical in the spring when the snow melts faster than the rivers and soil can absorb it. All right, so the second part of lesson 5.12 is landslides. Landslides occur when a large amount of rock and earth move or slide down a slope. Land slides, the name tells you what it is. So it occurs when the force of gravity overcomes the force holding earth materials together. When this happens, those materials slide down the slope of the area. Okay, so that brings us into 5.13 wildfires. In the United States, an average of 100,000 wildfires destroy roughly 5 million acres each year, and this has been in the news a lot lately. In recent years, these estimates are even higher, at close to 9 million acres lost in any given year. A wildfire can move at a rate of 14 miles per hour. This is faster than a human can run. So wildfires are an unplanned fire that burns in a natural setting such as a forest. There are three things that a fire requires. That's fuel, oxygen, and a heat source. So fuel is materials that are flammable, such as wood and dry grass. More fuel, bigger the fire. So more dry wood, the bigger the fire will be. Air, which is all around us because the oxygen feeds the fire, and a heat source to spark the fire. So the two most common heat sources for wildfires are lightning strikes and accidental sources, such as cigarettes and campfires. So it's a sad fact that 75% of forest fires are started by human carelessness. So the fire can start and spread quickly, which is why they oftentimes get out of control, particularly during a drought because that's when branches and twigs die and dry out, creating fuel for the fire. Wildfires may occur in any state, but they're most common in the West, where heat, drought, and thunderstorms provide perfect conditions for their creation. And lastly, we have 5.14 tornadoes. A tornado is a violent rotating column of air extending from a thunderstorm down to the ground. Tornadoes can be very fast, with winds up to 300 miles per hour, and they can be up to a mile wide. I think the largest recorded, though, was over 2 miles wide and up to 50 miles long, their path of destruction. Tornadoes can be going so fast they could drive, as this picture shows, pieces of straw into trees and create paths of damage over 50 miles long. On average, there are 1,000 tornadoes nationwide. They're all over the world, from India to Australia, but most occur in the United States, in a place called Tornado Alley, the most active breeding ground for tornadoes, which is in the middle of the United States here. It extends from Texas up through Oklahoma, Kansas, Nebraska, and the Dakotas. This is because warm, moist air from the Gulf of Mexico meets cool, dry air from Canada, right in the middle of the United States. This most likely happens during spring and summer. And as these two air masses meet, they create instability in the atmosphere. The hot air wants to rise, the cool air wants to sink, and this will create this swirling cloud that we know as a tornado. So that's all we have for today. So these are examples of some of the natural disasters that you can choose for the 5.15 teacher graded assignment natural disaster presentation. If you want more details on how to complete this assignment, please come to the flipped follow-up or look in the lesson 5.15 for the directions. Have a great day. Thank you. Bye.